Good morning. It is a beautiful day. I may sound funny, but I feel great. Got a 20-month-old daughter at home, so I pretty much sound like this all the time, but it'll pass. I am so pleased to be here in Renton today. I'm King County Executive Dow Constantine. The recent results from the one-night count, a 19% increase in homeless residents across King County, confirm the state of emergency in our region. And it underscores the need to work together at every level of government and with our community partners to take action and take action now. I applaud Senator Sharon Nelson for demonstrating that leadership we need in Olympia, proposing nearly $300 million to pay for rapid rehousing and emergency shelter. Now we need other members of our legislature, and we need Congress to recognize this for what it is, a humanitarian crisis. Here at the local level, we are delivering results. In late December, I tripled the number of shelter beds at county-owned buildings in downtown Seattle and joined with the City of Seattle in funding an expanded women's shelter in Greenwood. We've also helped nearly 800 homeless veterans find a home, and we continue to work with 300 more who have a voucher for housing and just need a landlord to provide them a place to use that voucher. Today, I am announcing a series of additional actions that will increase emergency homeless shelter capacity and expand access to affordable housing across King County. These actions include $280,000 to expand emergency shelter capacity and access in South and East King County, $7 million for capital projects that will create an additional 237 units of affordable housing across the county, including units set aside for people who are exiting homelessness and for homeless veterans, and $10 million in rental assistance and services that help formerly homeless residents succeed in their housing, including help finding employment, education, and other resources. These funds will deliver tangible results for communities across King County, and I'm going to give you just a half dozen examples of the kinds of services that we're going to be able to provide. A new day center in Federal Way for homeless men and women. It will provide referrals to services for mental health and addiction services, and I want to thank our friends in Federal Way for their support. We will keep an East Side women's shelter open for 2 additional months this winter. We will fund additional beds for homeless youth and young adults at an overnight shelter on the East Side. We'll fund a day center and a drop-in facility for homeless youth and young adults in the city of Auburn. It will now be open on weekends, and I want to thank the mayor of Auburn, Nancy Backus, for joining us here today. We will fund new construction of affordable housing for families, for seniors, for people with developmental disabilities. And we will connect people with the services they need to address the root causes of homelessness. Having enough inventory of affordable housing not only helps people transition out of homelessness, it reduces the number of men, women, and children who fall into homelessness. Too many of our brothers and sisters are just a paycheck or two away from sleeping in a shelter or worse. When the rent gets higher and the paycheck doesn't, homelessness becomes a greater and greater problem. By preventing homelessness, we not only reduce the need for emergency shelter, we provide so many more harms, and we help people in our community be able to live healthy and productive and contributing lives. To help people achieve their full potential, we need to ensure that safe, affordable housing is coupled with access to opportunity. That's why the strategic plan for affordable housing I recently sent to the County Council includes transit-oriented development. As chair of the Sound Transit Board of Directors, I've made it a priority to include affordable housing on Sound Transit property, and we are delivering. 2 projects are underway, one at Othello Station and one at Capitol Hill, that will open next month and add hundreds of additional units of affordable housing. And the Sound Transit 3 package that I will propose for the November ballot will contribute $20 million to the Regional Equitable Development Initiative, known as the READY Fund. That will include policies that enable us to leverage sound transit investments for more affordable housing and that access to opportunity that people need. My strategy is one focused on prevention, the most effective, least expensive approach to confronting homelessness. The first work we do with our funding from the voter-approved Best Starts for Kids levy will be to take on the challenge of youth and family homelessness through a prevention program. By increasing the number of kids who grow up in safe, stable housing in well-connected communities, we will increase the number of youth who reach adulthood ready to thrive and to succeed. An excellent example is right behind us here today, Kirkland Avenue Townhomes. These are units funded in part by the county that demonstrate what we can achieve when we all work together. This neighborhood, known as Sunset, the Sunset area is a revitalization success story, transforming a deteriorating housing project into a vibrant 21st century community with a brand new King County library and a child development center and playgrounds and a mix of affordable and market rate housing. I want to thank our host today, Renton Mayor Dennis Law, and Renton Housing Authority Executive Director Mark Groper for welcoming us to Renton and helping us show off what our community can do when we work hand in hand. I'd now like to hand it over to Joe McDermott, who is the chair of the King County Council. Joe understands that people who have experienced homelessness need not only to find housing, but to get back on their own 2 feet and become the thriving, contributing citizens that they want to be. And throughout his career in the legislature and at the King County Council, he has helped make that possible. Please welcome Council Chair Joe McDermott.
My thanks to Executive Constantine, particularly for being such a strong leader in this area and partnering with the council, with King County Housing Authority, with Renton Housing Authority, with so many others in addressing the needs we have before us today. My personal passion for addressing homelessness comes from the fact that as a young adult, I came out to my parents and my family. And I knew as I did that I had their unconditional love and support, that I would not end up homeless as a result of that conversation. But I know that far too many young people in our communities don't have that same security. And that is why some estimates are up to 40% of youth and young adults who are homeless are gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgendered, or queer. It's out of that passion on my part, but every one of us working within homelessness brings our own passion and our own dedication to the issue, recognizing that there are any number of reasons why people become homeless, and we must address all of them individually to be able to solve the problem. I was honored to stand in November with Executive Constantine and the mayor when they declared a state of emergency on homelessness, recognizing local governments are doing as much as we possibly can within our resources, but we truly need more resources to address the rising incidence of homelessness throughout our communities, from the state and the federal level. That work needs to continue. We need strong partners there to engage in that work with us, regardless of the cause, whether it's young people, gay and lesbian, bisexual, transgender, whether it's young people of color, within the entire population, veterans, people with mental health issues, substance abuse and alcoholism, victims of domestic violence. Whatever the causes of homelessness, we have to work together to address all of them, surround people with support and services, rapid rehousing, and the announcements and the funding announced today roll out to do all of that work. to expand shelter capacity and access, to build more housing, and to provide the supportive wraparound services. Together, we can do this work. The announcements today are significant steps forward in the progress we are making, but we continue to need assistance from our state and our federal partners. And now it's my pleasure to introduce my colleague on the King County Council and my friend, Council Vice Chair Bregan Dunn.
Thanks, Joe. Well, good morning. Thanks, Joe, for that introduction. I'm privileged to represent this area of Renton on the King County Council. And just last month in Maple Valley, I did a focus group on the mental illness and drug dependency levy to see how we could improve it to serve the needs of mental health and drug and alcohol dependency. And one of the main themes that came out of that discussion was the importance of having affordable housing. I'm proud today that King County is taking steps towards that need. As part of today's action, the City of Renton Housing Authority will receive $1.8 million for Sunset Court, which is one of the many projects of the Sunset Area Revitalization. It's a major redevelopment in transportation, stormwater control, mixed income housing, and community entities for the Sunset and surrounding communities. We still got a long ways to go in the fight for homelessness and affordable housing, but we got to celebrate the small victories like today. So I look forward to working with my colleagues on the King County Council, the executive, the City of Renton, as we continue to find solutions for homelessness in our region. Now, it's my privilege to introduce one of our newest members of the King County Council, my colleague, Claudia Balducci.
Good morning. I'm really delighted to be here today to help announce these significant investments in the short-term and sort of medium-term ways to address the homelessness crisis that we're seeing in our community. I think we've all tracked some of the recent events and the recent one-night count of the homeless. In my district, on the east side of Lake Washington, we see great affluence, but also great poverty and a rising level of homelessness. These investments really demonstrate how working together regionally, we can start to change that story and turn that around. We're seeing here the cities on the east side have all stepped up and added some additional funding to increase shelter beds on the east side for men, at the men's shelter in Bellevue, for women at the Sophia Way, and for children at Friends of Youth, among other places. And now with this county investment of over $100,000, we'll be able to expand not just the beds, but the amount of time those shelters are open so that people have a roof overhead through the winter months into the spring. There are also some significant investments for more affordable housing, which is ultimately the solution for people to be able to be housed permanently, not just on an emergency basis. I really look forward to continuing to work with the executive, my colleagues on the council, the cities, and our colleagues at the state and federal level to really address this growing concern. Thank you very much for your time today, and I am now proud to announce my colleague on the King County Council and chair of the Health, Human Services, and Housing Committee, Jeannie Cole-Wells.
Thank you, Councilmember Balducci, and to our executive and Councilmember and Chair Joe McDermott. I'm really pleased to be here today. And as the executive stated, we need to ensure that individuals have a place to live affordably to transition away from homelessness. It doesn't do any good to just provide shelter. So this multifaceted approach is something that is desperately needed and is something that will really work. Councilmember McDermott mentioned about having a passion. And my passion for this topic began in 1989. Some of you may remember Thanksgiving time, 1989, south of the Kingdom, the Muddy Flats area, a group of individuals started a tent city. And the mayor of Seattle, new mayor at that time, in 1988, Norm Rice, asked me to chair a new group, which was the Bus Barn Shelter. And I did that. It was before I was an elected official, and it taught me so much that I've carried with me today. We eventually worked with SHARE to develop a self-governed model that turned into the Seattle Housing Authority with the Archdiocese to purchase the Aloha Inn on the eastern side of Queen Anne Hill on Aurora, to develop a completely transitional program, self-governed, to get people to have a secure and safe place to stay, to be able to have transportation access, and to be able to have services that were very much needed, and to get a job, move out and make way for other people to come in. That's been a very successful model, and it's one that I've carried with me all this time. Now, as Councilmember Balducci mentioned, I am the new chair of the Health, Housing, and Human Services Committee. And as such, I'm really looking forward to the implementation plan for a youth and family homelessness prevention initiative. $19 million approved by King County voters last November as part of the Best Starts for Kids levy. Now, this initiative is intended to prevent and divert children and youth and their families from becoming homeless. That's the best way. Our committee will engage around work related to the reauthorization as well of the MID program, the Mental Illness and Drug Dependency Sales Tax, which goes to fund a spectrum of programs aimed at stabilizing people who are suffering from mental illness and chemical dependency, and to divert them to appropriate services and treatment and away from jails and emergency rooms. Really critical. With that, I think that it's all very exciting. We need a multifaceted approach. It's just lovely to stand here in this beautiful sunny day and look at these wonderful places. It's a real village. It's going to be a very important step in increasing the access to the means to get out of homelessness. With that, I would now like to introduce the mayor of the city of Renton, Mayor Dennis Law.
Thank you very much, everybody, and welcome to Renton. We have two council members here who are responsible to make sure that the sun was shining, and they fulfilled that, so welcome to our city. As the executive mentioned earlier, we're standing in front of the Kirkland Avenue Townhomes, which was a recent project that shows that we are transforming what was previously a neglected neighborhood to a vibrant community with a mix of affordable and market rate housing. Today's grant of $1.8 million from King County Housing Finance Program is another critical step that helps us realize our vision for a renewed Sunset neighborhood. The funds will help provide 50 units of family housing for households with incomes below 50% of the area median income level. The $16.5 million project includes 4 buildings with 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units surrounding a central courtyard and will be completed sometime next year. 10 units will be set aside for homeless families. 10 units will be for individuals who have disabilities and are being discharged from skilled nursing facilities and other types of institutions. 20 units will be replacement housing for families who have lived in the former Sunset Terrace public housing complex, which is now being demolished. And the remaining units will be used for low-income families. Supporting this entire Sunset redevelopment has been one of the city's highest priorities, and as you've heard several times today, the partnerships have been really important, and working with King County and the Renton Housing Authority has provided us with the opportunity to really change lives for a lot of people that are less fortunate in the community. So at this time, it's my pleasure to introduce Lainey Sickinger, who's the board president from our local churches, the Renton Ecumenical Association of Churches, who have done a tremendous job with helping us with homelessness and other needs in the community.
Thank you, Mayor Law. And I just want to thank you and the City of Renton for the wonderful partnership that you have just the example that you are to other communities on how to partner with your local nonprofits and the faith community to get some things done with limited resources. We've done a tremendous job, in particular Linda Smith, who's here today and is the director of our Center of Hope, which is based in the basement, a former jail in the city hall. And we just need to really thank the county and Executive Constantine and the city county council for the funding that will allow us to maintain our family side of that shelter, so that families whose children are in the Renton schools can have a safe and warm place to sleep at night and won't be turned out, because that funding replaces funding that we got previously that went away last year. So thank you for that. I think Renton is an example of how the local community, nonprofits, municipalities at the local and county level can really make a change. And I just really encourage everyone here to take note of the one-night count increase in Renton. The number of unsheltered in Renton nearly doubled from last year, and really encourage support of the initiative that Senator Nelson is taking at the state level, and really employ your congressional representatives to support funding, because it truly is a state of emergency here in Renton. So on that, I'll just go ahead and introduce our next speaker, Mr. Johnny Barnes, who is a resident of these lovely townhomes here, the Kirkland Avenue townhomes. Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you to everyone that's here. As a resident of the Kirkland townhomes here, I'm glad to be speaking and representing. For me and my daughter, we have been in a homeless situation for quite a while, so this is definitely a blessing to be able to have a roof over our head and not be sleeping under the bridges or in cars or with other friends and stuff. Renton Housing Authority has provided a really nice, safe place. The places are brand new. They're really, really super nice. My daughter's just ecstatic with it. They have classes. They have provided, Renton Housing Authority, to teach us how to cook or budget our income, our very limited income. So with that, I mean, it's just a lot to just really be thankful for. We were in other places that were really run down and things, but Julia, our manager here, this housing, the neighbors, they're all nice. Everybody's friendly. When we moved in, people are walking up, giving us foods and plates of food, just welcome to the neighborhood. So it's a safe neighborhood. It makes you feel welcome. It makes you feel good to be a part of getting up out of the homeless situation. I just want to say there's a very small door for men with children out there in the shelters. So if that's something that can really be addressed, me and my daughter, we slipped through the hole. We made it, and we're here, and we feel comfortable. We feel really, really comfortable. My daughter's graduating this year, and a single parent dad. I'm proud of her, and I think all the work that all you guys are doing. It makes those of us that are working to get up out of the homeless situation. You got to be persistent, though. You really got to be persistent and stick with it and tap into all the resources that are out there to offer. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I think that is a perfect way to wrap up the prepared comments today. This is a wonderful opportunity that is presented to us. There will be more in the future, because this is not a one-time effort. We are committed on an ongoing basis to building our capacity to ensure that every person in this county has a safe home, and further has access to all of the opportunity being created here in Martin Luther King County. And we would be glad to answer any questions you might have. And we also have some experts with us today who can take your technical questions. Please.
Executive, you've no doubt heard the criticism that one of the big contributing factors of the homeless problem in your county is people coming from other parts of the country to the area because of the services that are available to them. How do you balance that issue with providing the resources you announced today to people who live in your county who are needing those resources, with people coming out of the county and taking some of the resources as well?
Okay. So first of all, that is a line that is used by some, but it doesn't reflect the reality that we see on our streets. Some of the homeless are from elsewhere, but many of the homeless are people who grew up right here in King County. And standing next to you is Mark Putnam, who is the director of All Home King County, and he can answer a little more specifically. Mark, why don't you come on up?
So the data that we have shows that 87% of people experiencing homelessness in King County, their last known zip code was in King County, and 97% their last known zip code was somewhere in Washington State.
Can you give us some more details about when that study was taken?
The data is collected through our homeless management information system. So when someone is seeking services, we ask for their last known zip code. So it does not tell us, everything about that person's history and the path that they've been on.
So I think the phenomenon is more likely to be that people are coming here looking for jobs, looking for opportunity because we have a vibrant economy. And it may be either for those of us who are raised here or for those coming from elsewhere that something goes wrong, that something doesn't work out, and circumstances lead you to losing your home. That is a more realistic scenario than the one you describe, where people are coming to a usually cold and rainy corner of the country intending to be homeless.
Can you talk at all about we've got the sources of the funding, the $7 million
Yes.
and the $10 million, but is that new money, is that not money that would have been going to these projects anyway?
And I'm going to just kind of list off the question is what are the funding sources, and is this all money that we would be spending on homelessness anyway and housing? I'm going to refer you to Mark Ellerbrook, who's the Regional Housing and Community Development Manager at our Human Services Department. But let me just tell you what the basic funding sources are. There's funding from capital funds from a variety of sources. These include document recording fees that are paid at the county. There's funding from the Vets and Human Services Levy. There's funding from Mental Illness and Drug Dependency Fund, or MID, which is a sales tax that was approved by the County Council. And there are funds coming from fees collected when the county documents real estate transactions, and those are going to shelter capacity. And we have our expert that I mentioned right here, Mark Ellerbrook, to tell you more.
Thank you. So in answer to your question, these are resources that we do get year to year, but we have the ability and the flexibility to prioritize those. And what you're seeing us doing is working with our funding partners, our community partners, really to prioritize these resources to the greatest need. And right now, those are largely people with very nominal incomes or people who are homeless. So what you're seeing is the reflection of that prioritization of resources.
So it's money for homelessness or for homeless services, but it's being prioritized for?
It's homeless services generally, as well as capital funding that goes to for affordable housing. And again, that's where we're trying to prioritize it towards the greatest need.
So how much of what you've appropriated, like here in this press release, is new funding, are part of those new decisions, and how much has already sort of been there? If you can give us maybe a percentage or something.
Yeah, so again, this is existing, most of this is existing funding resources that we get, and what we are doing is prioritizing it for the need. So all of this is resources the county receives year to year, whether it be from the state or from the federal government or from our local document recording fees. And what we're doing, where in years past we may have used that for a variety of services, we are working to have that be targeted to the neediest, the homeless and the very low income.
Are there some areas that will not benefit from those dollars?
I think what we've tried to do is figure out where the priorities are. So again, I think we, as we've talked about at depth, we really do need it to be focused at the greatest need, and so we feel like this is the biggest priority. There are a variety of ways we can spend the money, but I think it's incumbent upon us to prioritize it for the neediest.
So when you say prioritize for the neediest, that means shelter and affordable housing?
Yes.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. And the services that support people in that housing.
That's good. Thanks.
There's-
Additional question?
Yeah, there's been a question about whether this current crisis is being driven by the heroin epidemic and the concern that there's a lack of treatment beds in the county. And can you speak to that at all?
Yeah, I can't speak to the number of beds, although we are very focused on the heroin, increasing challenge of heroin. When the president was in town a couple months ago, I had the opportunity to spend some time with him, and one of the first things he raised with me was his concern about the epidemic of opium addiction, not just regionally but nationally, and the ways in which it is contributing to homelessness. And King County, of course, is taking the lead in asking the legislature to help us increase treatment options. But I have Adrienne Quinn, who's the head of our Human Services Agency, who can tell you a little bit more.
We do agree that the increasing heroin epidemic is a significant factor in the increase in homelessness. And as Executive Constantine noted, the county is engaging right now with the state legislature and other partners to address this epidemic. Both the Department of Community and Human Services and Public Health are looking toward a range of solutions, including working with the medical community, because one of the factors is that opiates have been overprescribed, and now there are people who may have been taking those drugs for back injury or other injuries, and they wind up being addicted. And so we are working to both increase capacity and address the epidemic itself.
Yes. We had a fairly extensive meeting about this, Adrienne and I and some of her experts last week. I will, just as an addendum, say that I've been engaged in a tour of every school district in the county. There are 19, for those of you who are counting. And one of the things that was really eye-opening was throughout the county, concerns were raised by school administrators and counselors about increasing heroin addiction in their communities. Not just in what we used to think of as the inner city, but in Issaquah and in Maple Valley, places that historically we wouldn't have associated with that challenge. But the kids are getting the prescription drugs from their parents. Then the heroin dealer comes into town, a much easier source, and the problems just grow. So we are very focused on this, both as it relates to heroin and public health more generally. Others?
Now, as a result, going along with the whole heroin thing, there will likely be a segment of the homeless population who does not want help, who does not want homes. And I think there are folks who live in these neighborhoods who are concerned about sort of the policing element of, when you try to help the folks that want the help, what do you do about the folks that don't want the help that may be a threat to those communities?
That's a vexing challenge. I think Mark Putnam, again, can speak maybe a little more directly to, or perhaps Adrienne, to our strategies around those who are resistant to getting help. It may be that they are not in a position to engage in very good decision making, or it may simply be that they don't want, for some reason, to be in the kind of environment that we're able to provide. But Adrienne, why don't you tell a little bit more?
Sometimes when people are suffering from mental illness or an addiction, they don't recognize that they need help. I mean, most of us can accept that people don't voluntarily live under a bridge or in a tent. And so the strategy is really one of progressive engagement, continuing to work with individuals so that when they are ready to receive treatment, they are able to receive treatment. One of the additional strategies that we're working on is we have a bill pending in the state legislature right now to allow for involuntary commitment for individuals who are addicted, similar to the laws we currently have for those who are in mental health crisis. So if somebody is a danger to themselves or others, that could be a recourse for us to do. And in addition, it is important that we continue to receive the funding to increase placement for people who require treatment for addiction, and we are working both at the state and federal level to increase resources there.
There's one more.
I've got a question for maybe for Claudia, maybe for Dow. Since Mayor Murray's been elected, he's really been saying there's a need to expand the services for the homeless outside of Seattle, where they seem to be concentrated. And my limited experience on the east side, there are plans for a permanent women and family shelter in Kirkland. There's plans for a permanent winter shelter in Bellevue, they haven't been built, and they're on a pretty relaxed timeline as far as I can tell. So I'm just wondering if there's any urgency about getting these other services around the county.
So I'm going to say a couple words and then turn it over to Claudia. First, the announcements today include funding for facilities and services on the east side. Second, Mayor Murray, these council members, and I are all of one mind on this, that these challenges are county-wide and region-wide challenges. These issues happen on the regional scale because that is the job market, that is the place where the prices of housing are being driven up. And neither the homeless nor anyone else pays much mind to these arbitrary municipal boundaries. They're less and less important, which is why I touched on this theme earlier about all of us working together. When we work with the City of Renton, when we work with Auburn or Federal Way, when we work with community partners, we are reflecting the reality that exists here, that we are no longer 40 separate jurisdictions in this county. We are one big community saddled with 40 different ways of governing ourselves. And we have to rise above that and provide for the people. So, Claudia. Yeah.
Kent has resisted locating a permanent shelter. We can't find a place.
So I'll just say a word about the east side. I'll leave somebody else to speak to Kent. But, I think you've identified the immediate need and then the next steps. The immediate need is for roofs over people's heads who are currently outdoors. And what's happened this winter is that the cities on the east side and with this support from the county have really stepped up. There are 2 women's shelters operating now. There's a youth shelter. There's the men's shelter, which is the largest shelter on the east side. And those, we've added beds and we've added time so that they stay open. The next steps include citing that permanent location for the men's shelter, which has been rotating over time and needs a new location for next year. So it's very urgent. And there's a lot of work and meetings going on right now to locate that for next year. And then to take the next step. I mean, this is going to be a series of efforts on behalf of everyone in the region. And we're mindful of that. This is a big step today. It's very important. There's more to be done. And that's also very important too. I don't know if anybody wants to step up to speak to your specific question. Okay.
So I'd just like to remind, I'm not sure if you're aware, but the $50,000 grant we got here for the REACH family shelter, that shelter, we expanded our women's program to include intact families. We can house 55-ish people, maybe more, a night. That funding we started last year with a grant from the City of Seattle because he was recognizing that perhaps if the surrounding communities could shelter some of the families, that would be helpful. The funding that we got today, that we announced today, is what's actually keeping that family shelter open. So this is an example. It's here in Renton. There are families intact. Many of them are moms and dads with kids, and many of them are working families with their kids in the Renton school. So that is one example that's existing today.
So I want to thank you all for being here today, and we have our elected officials, our community members, and some wonderful and dedicated experts from our staff who can answer your further questions. This is yet another step in fulfilling our commitment to ensure that every person in King County has the opportunity to fulfill his or her potential. Thank you so much.